panelists again, Graeme Sloan from AusQuest, who you've met, Ambassador Gallardo from Peru, who you've met, and then two people you are yet to meet. I won't go through their full biography because our next moderator, Jeff Hart, will do that. Suffice to say, we have the relatively new ambassador to Australia for the Republic of Chile, Miss Beatriz de la Fuente. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador. And next to Ambassador de la Fuente is Christian Easterday, Managing Director of Hot Chili, one of the most long-standing explorers in ASX-listed explorers in Chile. So between him and Graeme, how many years would the two of you have operating in Latin America, do you think? As long as your age. So 22 years. Yeah, we want to look at some of the ideas. We had a great discussion there about the advantages of Minister Ice, and the ambassador raised some of the. Graeme raised some of the advantages of operating in Peru. But it strikes me when we have these conversations that we should really address some of the misconceptions, some of the assumptions that we have about in Australia, among Australian investors, about Latin America and Chile and Peru in particular. Christian, I might start with you if that's okay. Often when we talk about Latin America in Australian mining circles, I hear similar phrases a lot. Latin America is dominated by low-grade, high-tonnage deposits. It's the domain of the majors. There's no opportunities for Australian juniors. All the ground is taken up by Canadian companies. The permitting process is too cumbersome, it's too far away, there's community issues. I'm sure you hear these sort of complaints a lot. What's your general response to those sort of assumptions and misconceptions, if you like?
So look, I think that's a great introduction to Latin America and some of the perceptions in the Australian market, which have been changing over my 17 years in Latin America since I founded Hot Chili, and really probably that is hiding probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest natural resource opportunities for our sector. So firstly, you made some comment in regard to the nature of the mines in Latin America. This is akin the Andean belt to the Pilbara region or the Carajás region of Brazil for iron ore, as it is to copper and gold, and the type of deposits that supply close to 70% of the copper for the world on a bulk scale generally, and that's the business that Hot Chili is engaged in. But very much, what we found in our history in Chile is a very receptive regulatory environment. This is a top-tier jurisdiction, Australia, Canada, Chile, and Peru following up shortly behind Chile and following in the footsteps. This is where the centre of gravity is moving to in mining and mining investment. BHP, Australia's flag bearer, largest mining company in the world, has just announced some $12 billion just into brownfields investments in Chile, with some of the highest capital intensities currently on offer in the sector. So that tells you a lot about patient capital wanting a safe jurisdiction for investment in long life assets. So that naturally favours the majors. However, the opportunity really lies in this perception issue for the juniors, and so Hot Chili is certainly one of the early pioneering groups that entered Chile, and we took a very, very different approach. We saw that obviously this was somewhere where the Canadians like to invest. The Australians were typically aligned with the African continent, English rule of law, English language in a lot of countries, and a good track record of success. So to break into big projects in Chile, this view that the majors hold all of the land is far from the truth. There is a lot of private ownership through Chile and also in Peru, and therefore it is about cultural understanding, and Hot Chili has really taken that to the nth degree. We have very, very patient timeframes with building relationships from government to local mayors, to all of the stakeholders around us, but importantly all of the local mining fraternities and families of Chile that have had these assets pass through generations. And so we didn't turn up like an Australian company, very impatient, can we do a deal? That requires a very big checkbook and probably some stupidity. So we built all of our relationships first, and some of our deals take 5 on 7 years, on 6 years, Cortadera 3 years, Chilean Nuclear Commission 5.5 years. So that's about breaking into that investment sphere and getting your hands on assets which through consolidation can be put together. We now have 1 billion tonnes put together on the coastline, 17 years of advancement through all of the phases to get to our final phase of EIA submission early next year, hopefully, and PEA on what is a top 5 project outside of the hands of the majors in the copper space. So something now very meaningful through patience and consolidation and relationship building, and through that, our interaction with the government, as you'll be pleased to know, has been fantastic. We've received the type of support that you would expect a major or a mid-tier to receive coming in. Hot Chili has invested significantly in Chile, some $230 million so far, probably another $50 or $60 million going into a $1.3 billion project to build. So it's a significant time frame, a significant investment time frame, and therefore you need strong relationships with regulators to government. So we've had a significant amount of success on that front. I think that we were one of the first companies to receive our VAT back as a credit against building this project. We were one of 2 companies in the past 18 years to have received a maritime concession to extract seawater from the ocean. It took us 10 years to get. We were one of the last companies to get a terminal connection to the central grid in our local area. And then this morning we've just announced that the Chilean Ministry of Economy has registered both of our projects, our water project, which we're developing as a multi-user business for an entire region, as well as our copper project, have both been registered as priority status projects for fast-tracking and streamlining of our final approvals process. So that is my experience in Chile, and hopefully there's some things there that might hit a chord.
Thanks, Christian. I might take you up actually on that last point, because you did make that announcement this morning. And Ambassador Del Fuentes, you mentioned this morning in the Alabac Paydirt breakfast panel that perhaps Chile has had an obsession with permitting in the past and has developed it into an expertise that isn't always conducive to encouraging investment and moving project developments along quicker. Can you talk about how the government is approaching the framework of regulatory burdens in the mining space?
Thank you. Well, thank you, first of all, Christian, for your testimony and your narrative. I think I have nothing to add. It's wonderful what your experience, and I'm very happy about that. What I can say, and we have all learned, the private and the public sector, as we work together, is to do it in a comprehensive way, approaching the communities, approaching the legal aspect, approaching the economic, and of course the sustainability and the environment. All these parts, they go together, and when one is weaker, the whole process gets affected. So if there is a lesson learned, is the comprehensive approach. And yes, we have had a challenge in the past regarding the permits. We even call it permissiology, like a way to challenge ourselves, because we're very law-abiding citizens. We're very strict about what the law says and what it doesn't say, and what you can do and what you cannot. And at some point you could say we're not flexible enough, but we're working on that as we speak in Congress to ease the process and make it faster, more efficient, but at the same time complying with everything, complying with the law, complying with the environment, the communities, and the sustainability approach, which is not only a concept, it's a way of doing things, and it's the way we're doing things now. So It is a challenge, but we're working on that.
Thank you, Ambassador. Graeme, I'll come to you. I was listening to your presentation this morning, and I've been following your share price very closely this year. Makes me think this is an overnight success story, 15 years in the making. You've had great discovery. I think you should be okay. I think you've had great discovery success this year after more than a decade of plugging away. Really, you know, what does that resilience and that persistence and the success you have say about the opportunity that AusQuest has always seen in Peru and perhaps wider Latin America?
Well, thanks, Dom. On?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been there we started in 2010. We were thinking of ways that we could work in South America, because junior explorers, it's pretty tough in looking at in a big man's game. There's a lot of big companies there. What we found is the big companies tend to stick into, there's a belt of rocks there inland from the coast that they tend to want to stay in, because it's historically has produced all the major deposits, the multi-billion tonne deposits. And we had a look along the coastal belt and couldn't see any reason why they couldn't have some of the same. We've talked to many majors in the past, and they've trying to get them involved, because it's always, you can either raise funds through placements and shareholders, or you can raise funds through trading equity in your projects, which is what we elected to do. And we've had a couple of majors with us in Peru, which has been absolutely critical, because they've put in, we've probably spent $20 to $30 million on our exploration there. That's money that hasn't come from shareholders, hasn't diluted equity. So we took that pathway. But there was an area there that we saw that we thought had prospectivity through our technical people, and decided to have a crack at it. And we flew a mag survey, if you like, because in this country we work in lots of covered areas. The whole place is covered, it's flat. So there's a lot of geophysical work done, a lot of aeromag surveys everywhere now that people continually use. You see them as images everywhere. And we spent $1 million US flying a major survey, and that gave us indications, or rightly or wrongly, because it's just an interpretation of where we should be. And we picked up a lot of ground, and we've worked through it over the last 10 years, dropping lots, keeping some, expanding, whatever. And we ended up with this. We've ended up with two areas. One's to the south near Ilo, which we still think has some legs. We'll see what happens with Solis. But the area that we're focusing on at the moment is up near Chala. And we drilled a couple of other areas, prospects, before we got to Cangallo. Unfortunately, or fortunately for South 32, who were our partners, they pulled out before we actually did the work at Cangallo. And they're a great partner, not a bad word to say about them, ever. But they happened to pull out, so we've ended up with 100% of this, which is for a porphyry copper is a little bit unusual. You end up, if you've had a project for a long time, which some of the porphyries are, you'll have complicated ownership, and this one's pretty simple. It's just us. And we went in and we tested the market with a lot of majors to see if we could get somebody to fund the drilling there, and they ended up saying, well, we did get some offers, but they're pretty rubbish. So we decided to raise funds and have a crack ourselves, because we're in the business of high risk, high exploration. We've been looking for large deposits since the beginning. So we decided to have a crack ourselves, and as it's turned out, it's come to fruition. But Peru is just, if you want to go looking for nickel, you don't go to Peru. Sorry, you go to WA. If you want to go looking for copper, you go to the South American countries. Africa, yes, but that's got its own other issues. So the main reason initially was its prospectivity, and then every country has its idiosyncrasies. There's lots of things that happen in Peru with permitting that I don't really like. They take a lot of time for no real added value to anyone. Doesn't help the environment, doesn't help anything, and it just takes time. And for a junior, time is money. So if this case we've drilled 8 holes on 5 pads. We have a permit for another 15 pads, but we had to position those pads 18 months ago. We've now done the drilling and we understand more and we want to move some of those pads. So that's another 3 to 6 months. And that 3 to 6 months is will come up in about July. So we've got enough pads to do more drilling now that we want to do. In July we'll get some more approvals and we'll do another round of drilling the same as we have today so far. So we're going to take between now and the end of the year to do the drilling. Now, technically, I'd like to be able to do all that in the next 3 months, which you can do physically. So there's permitting issues. The Peruvian system is very transparent and it's to the letter of the law, and they dot every damn I and cross every T, which I'd like to miss a few T's occasionally. but that's, you know, once you know it, it's not our country, it's theirs, so you've got to live with that. But things are getting just as bad here. I have areas here that I haven't been able to access for 2 years. So anyone who says it's easier in this country is not out there doing the work. Not out there in the boondocks where we are doing the work. So it's a great place, mainly because of the prospectivity, though. That's the big seller.
Thanks, Graeme. Ambassador Gallardo, we're here on stage with 2 junior companies, and and we're here in Western Australia that has a vibrant mining sector, largely because of junior companies that have been able and continue to make new discoveries in sometimes mature ground, sometimes in greenfields settings, and perhaps Peru hasn't yet been able to capture that junior sector, that vibrancy in exploration investment. Is that something that the government is recognised as an opportunity to grow the mining sector through exploration and through the junior sector?
Well, certainly, as I mentioned in my own presentation, Peru has recognized that for having in the future big operation projects, you need to start with a good approach to the junior mining companies. Following what I have been also hearing from the experience of the officials in the mining sector, Peru has been looking and concentrated in the effort with the junior companies, especially through Paydirt in Canada, in working with the Canadian counterparts. It seems that previous to COVID time, my commercial office has also establishing with AMEC contacts. We are members of AMEC here, but we need to talk frequently. And I think after COVID, one of the opportunities that we have been establishing this kind of direct dialogues with the officials has been this event in IMARC. Is because the flight and the time consuming, there is not possibility to have a long stay here, then this kind of events has allowed us to see many of those companies has working with juniors, are working also with big companies, have the opportunity to chat directly. Now the general frame, I think it's moving to see not only opportunities that we need to use. We hear that the mineral is important for the transition in energy. We know that we need to overcome some problems that we are facing now with the international system, but we also have some ideas clearly on the table for addressing the issue of the time. As I mentioned you, we clearly have now setting a dialogue among the different agencies of the government. We also has, in this moment, a leader in the area of investment, putting a lot of effort in prioritizing the projects of infrastructure for transport, for electrical supply, for water supply for the areas. And there is also the pressure of looking that the opportunity needs to be used now to have another vision on the processes in order to eliminate those steps not necessarily. We are now looking that we are in the horizon perceiving that countries that could set good levels of efficiency in this approach. As has been mentioned, our connection with the Chilean mining sector has some signs that has been increasing. There is a big company of mining in Peru, Buenaventura, that has been receiving capitals from Chile. Currently, we have a very important family, Lussig's family and Benavides family working together in enterprise that shows the sign of the proximity and the connection between countries and good practices. I am encouraging by the possibilities that we can complete our legal framework once it should be confirmed that our two administrations get together in a dual taxation agreement, that we can improve also the presence, the direct presence of the junior companies here. One of the elements could be an area that approach for encouraging largely is we have students and professionals working here in Western Australia that could be an initial contact for looking what could be the projects and the way to approach in the case of Peru. Geology is there. One of the reasons we continue to be a very attractive area is because as you have been looking in the pictures of Mitchell, that it's on the surface. And that diminishes the coast at the end. And that makes the balance when you have the perspective, how long time would take to do the following step, is the quality of the mineral and also the accessibility with low costs in the case of Peru. And once the juniors start to be frequently looking those potentials in Peru, they are going to realize that at the end, it's profitable activity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ambassador De La Fuentes, yesterday there was a lot of discussion about the geopolitical situation in the global economy, the global trade network, critical minerals in particular. Is there an opportunity in the current market, and Ambassador Gallardo mentioned the Trans-Pacific Partnerships, or the CPTPP now. Is there an opportunity in these times of changing allegiances and alliances for Australia and Chile to come closer together, particularly in minerals development?
Yes, absolutely. I think the times are uncertain, and we have to look for shelter with our partners, with our trustworthy partners. We have had, in the case of Chile, 80 years of relationships. We have every instrument that allows us to cultivate that relationship, a free trade agreement, a double taxation agreement, a strong relationship with the province, with the states. So yes, I think there are opportunities to do a lot more than we are already doing. Incentives too, we should look for more opportunities. In the case of Chile, we also have a direct flight. It's something very practical. You just take a flight, and in 14 and a half hours, you're in Santiago, you are in Latin America. So we are already a great hub, platform, a great bridge for Australia to reach out to Latin America. It's the moment to diversify our interests, to look elsewhere, to look to the rest of the Pacific, because a lot of attention has been paid to India, China, and the Southeast, but we're there. We have a lot of potential, a lot of more things to do, and we're ready to welcome you with open arms.
And what would your advice be to if there's companies in the room now considering investing in Chile? I might ask you first, and then you, Christian, the same question. What would your advice be to a company considering moving?
Well, to start planning a trip to the region. We can, of course, coincide in a trip to the region. You start in Santiago and then go to Lima and go and see all the opportunities. And even to the government of Western Australia. We were mentioning that yesterday, today in the morning too. In Chile, we also have, we're lucky to welcome both the governments of Victoria and Queensland. They have trade offices, investment offices, and they are working very hard for their respective states, but basically as Team Australia. I think we, hopefully, Western Australian authorities would consider also joining them, learning or just gathering information from them to see how well they're doing and start traveling and going to Chile and Peru.
I know there's a debate amongst the Paydirt editorial team about who's going to be the next to travel to the region. So there's a fight, if anything, to go. And Christian, what would your advice be to? You've seen a lot of Australian companies and Canadian companies come and go in your time in Chile. What's your advice to make a success of it?
Oh, look, I think go there with a very open mind. I think that when you get to Chile from Australia, and it's been commented to me so many times, people firstly need to get over their surprise at the size of Santiago and what that city is. You know, most of my colleagues from Australia say, well, we don't have a city like that in Australia, that big, with better architecture, better roads, better civil works. So it's a bit disappointing from the view that you're going to see some completely different looking, cultured city. And then you get over that and you realise that they've got fantastic wine like we have in Australia. The tourism aspect alone is probably one of the biggest hidden surprises. So the diversity of, you know, Australia looks to New Zealand or to Japan for skiing. Just one stop, you get off the plane and you're in some of the greatest ski fields in the world, sitting just above Santiago. So from that perspective, it's a very, very, I guess, enjoyable experience going to South America and realising that it's very different to probably perceptions. And then once you actually understand that that's tied to our industry, there are, in my opinion, a few great cities in the world to live in this fantastic industry that we have in natural resources in the world. And certainly some of the cities in Latin America would be right up in my top 5. And I think that coming from Perth, we all consider that we're probably sitting in the number 1. And the key people in Vancouver think they're number 1. They perhaps thought they were number 1 in Joburg as well at a point in time. But you know, cities like Lima, like Santiago, are certainly some of the bigger name cities for expats in this industry that want to work and bring their families.
Thank you, Christian. Unfortunately, we're going to have to call time on our discussion because